Hello, my Redemption family. Pastor Rick coming to you with one of these Ask Pastor Rick videos. Actually, this will be a series of videos this time because we're covering a big topic. We're going to talk about homosexuality from a Christian perspective. We could also talk about same-sex attraction or same-sex activity, perhaps LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, all that. Those letters get shoved in there. This is a whole bunch of questions that we've received for some time. And I'll be straight with you. I'll be straight with you. That wasn't intentional. Anyway, I'll be honest with you. I've been putting off doing this video series for some time. And part of that's just because of the potential for backlash, as well as it's a pretty complex issue. It's not a simple one. But I think I've been derelict in my duties. I've failed to equip you really in two things. First, with a clear biblical understanding of the teaching regarding same-sex attraction. And that's really important because as Bible-believing disciples of Jesus, we find ourselves increasingly in a post-Christian society. And so I really owe that to you to equip you. But then the second very important, equally as important part is how should we as Christians respond? I need to equip you in that because basically part of this video series will be a message of mistakes that we have made as Christians and as the church. And we need to do better, okay? So this will not be one video, but five. So this one will be about the biblical truth that, spoiler alert, same-sex activity is a sin, okay? This might be the longest of the 5 videos. The second video will be a response to some of the objections that are brought up to the biblical case. The third video will be about nature versus nurture and why that even matters. The fourth video will be the mistakes that the church has made and frankly continues to make at times. And then fifth and last will be a wrap up with some practical stuff like how does our church handle that within? What if you're struggling with same-sex attraction? What if you have a friend or a relative that comes out and some resources? Kind of a grab bag of practical stuff. All right, so that said, before we jump into the biblical case, I need to give a caveat. Not everyone will agree with our position. In today's society, that's obvious, right? And by the way, it's not unique. As humans, we disagree about all kinds of stuff, right? Gambling and pornography, marijuana, living together, smoking, politics, cussing, tattoos, on and on it goes. And we can disagree with each other with love and respect toward another human being, right? Like, let's avoid the trap that unless you agree with all I say and all I do, then you hate me and I hate you. That rhymed. It's pretty good, actually. But that's a trap, and that's not true, right? So even if you disagree with our position, hopefully you'll at least realize that we have a reasonable position. And there is love woven into it. I hope you see that. But at the very least, I hope you won't hate us, but really that's up to you. And we are going to try to love you either way. And even if you disagree with us, yes, we will love you. Okay? In any case, I'm really doing this video series to help shepherd our congregants right here at Redemption Chapel. Now, if you go to Redemption Chapel and these things make you wrestle and you're confused or you disagree and you want to discuss that with one of our pastors, by all means, call into the front office, set up an appointment. But what we won't do is have keyboard warrior battles in the comments section with people from around the globe. That's really not our interest. After all, let's not be too surprised. I'm a pastor of a Bible-believing church. I'm going to be taking a position that Christians have held for 2,000 years. So please pump the brakes on any sense of outrage. Absolutely, we can disagree charitably with each other. And yes, as Christians, we've made some big mistakes. I will address some of those. But let's avoid the intolerance that has shock and outrage because a Christian holds a traditionally Christian position that's quite clearly in our sacred text, the scriptures, the Bible. Like that would be really intolerant to not allow Christians to hold to the scriptures. You see that? Okay, so that's a caveat. Now let's roll up our sleeves and let's jump into it and talk about the biblical truth. As soon as I do that, I've got to hit another caveat that, of course, I'm addressing this for Christians who embrace the Bible. Some have a weaker view of the scriptures, whether they know it or not, and this video might not scratch the itch for them. And so I'm not going to spend time defending, giving apologetics for our view of the scriptures. That'd be another video, okay? I'm going to assume that. So that assumed, yes, homosexual activity is a sin according to the Bible. Notice I said activity, not attraction. I'll come back to that. But for now, let's look at some biblical data, all right? We'll start out where the Bible starts out. Genesis chapter 1, the created order. Now, in Genesis 1, we do not find a prohibition against homosexual activity. Not there. But what I don't want to do is miss the positive data for one man, one woman, leave, cleave, that is one flesh. By the way, when the Bible speaks about one flesh, you understand that's sexual in nature. That is a man and a woman coming together in a way that you learned about in health class, in middle school, high school, whatever, right? There's certain anatomy here. And when I was growing up, I loved Legos. Had tons of Legos. I remember going down to my grandparents, and as soon as we would get there for a week in St. Petersburg, we'd pull out all these Legos, throw them on the Florida room, the sunroom on the floor. We'd play all week long. Loved it. One of the cool things about Legos is I knew right away that you took this end and you clicked it into that end. I never tried to put male to male, and I never tried to put female to female. Everyone naturally knows these two click together in a certain way. That's human anatomy. That's one flesh. There is positive data there from Genesis 1, as well as the natural order, natural law. But I admit to you, that's not a hugely strong case. So what we can do is flip forward in Genesis and come to Genesis chapter 19. This is Sodom and Gomorrah, specifically Sodom. But we won't spend time here because, to be honest, it's really not a great passage to affirm nor to condemn homosexuality. And I think this video is going to be long enough. So let's keep moving, okay? So we'll move forward to Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13. This is similar to Leviticus 18:22, kind of redundant, so I'll just stick in 20:13. It says, if a man lies with a male, as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. Okay. I'll deal with some objections later, but I have to deal with one right here because right away, one of the objections that comes up is, listen, dude, in Leviticus 18-22, it condemns things like eating shellfish, which you do, man. You like shrimp, I know it. And it condemns combining two different types of fabric. Like, is that a cotton poly blend you're wearing there? Come on, man. So realize, little Christian man, that you're really inconsistent. Okay, time out. Leviticus 18-20 condemns a whole bunch of stuff, like incest, child sacrifice, bestiality, adultery, theft, the oppression of the poor, okay? So both sides on this homosexual debate are picking and choosing from Leviticus 18-20. You got to understand, unless you're saying, no, all that stuff's fine, bring it on, man. incest, child sacrifice, that's great. You're not saying that. You're saying those things are bad, but you want to say homosexuality is okay. Both sides are picking and choosing. I would just assert that we have good scholarship that backs up why we pick what we pick and not simply personal preference, okay? So what does that look like? Well, in the Old Testament, there are three categories of Old Testament law. There are moral commandments, there are ceremonial commandments, and there are civil commandments, okay? The moral are the commandments like don't murder, steal, rape, all that stuff, okay? So those are moral laws. Then you have ceremonial laws. These are the things that made the Jews uniquely Jewish people. Things like the kosher diet, including not eating shellfish. So things that made Jews unique and distinct. Those are satisfied and fulfilled in Christ. Those do not get pulled forward into the New Testament era. And then you have in the Old Testament civil laws, because after all, remember, they are a theocracy. So there's government laws, and you'll have things like punishments for crime and all that, which becomes instructive here. But for now, know this, the moral laws are the ones that get carried forward. That's why, why do you bring some forward and not others? The moral laws come forward. And one of the big clues is that the moral stuff is reaffirmed in the New Testament, which we'll see in a second with homosexuality being a sin. All right. This also takes care of another objection. If you listen to me closely as I quoted from Leviticus 20, it's like, dude, are you suggesting the death penalty for same-sex activity? What's wrong with you, man? No, we're not saying that at all. Remember, it was a theocracy, and the punishments were part of their civil law in their day, and that does not get carried forward. We are consistent about that. So, for example, in the Old Testament, it says disobedient children can be stoned. Not that they smoke the wacky tobacco. That's not what it's saying. No, but like with rocks, throw it at them, kill them, okay? Notice, nobody's suggesting in our civil government today that that's an appropriate punishment for disobedient children. However, nobody is saying that disobedience for children is totally cool. No, we'd say, you're right, that's a sin, but the punishment doesn't get carried forward. Bingo. It's exactly what we're saying with homosexuality, okay? We realize that. Hopefully that helps. All right. Now, I said earlier that they get reaffirmed in the New Testament. So let me show you a few of those. Romans chapter 1, verses 26 to 32 is a very important passage on this. Let me set it up. In verses 21 to 25, what's going on is Paul is writing about this cosmic rebellion. All of humanity has rebelled against our God, rejected the Creator. Instead, we have chosen to worship stuff in the created order. I heard Pastor Matt Chandler talk about this as we're basically saying, we don't want God, we just want his stuff. And sadly, God said, fine. And that's horribly tragic, horribly tragic. So that's verses 21 to 25. That's the setup. Now here's what verses 26 and 27 say. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. For their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error. But note this, then it goes on. Verses 20 to 31 lists a whole bunch of other sins. And because this is about cosmic rebellion of humanity against God, it's not just homosexuality, it's all kinds of stuff. And so it turns out homosexuality is just one out of many in this list. And then you get to verse 32. And what it says there is this. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things, all this list above, such things, including homosexuality, but all these other things, okay? Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, They not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. And to be honest, verse 32 is very true of our culture today. Okay? So, quite clearly, homosexual activity is sin, according to the Bible. I could go to other passages like 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. This is very similar to 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 10. In both cases, it gives a list of sin, and among that list, it says men who practice homosexuality. Okay? Again, it's among a list of sins, things that we would look at that list and go, yeah, those things are sin. And homosexuality, the practice of it, is in there. All right. So there is a biblical case. Yes, the Bible does clearly condemn homosexuality or homosexual activity as sin. I'm going to put a period right there. In the next video, what I'm going to do is answer some of the objections that are brought up toward that biblical case, right? Tune in for that.